And to that pot smoker, you should probably be with somebody who loves to smoke drugs like you do. Because that way you can go on smoking pot the rest of your life, blowing money on drugs, without anyone telling you not to do what you're obviously doing. Hello, I'm hoping to have a decently productive conversation, one way, unfortunately, about marijuana and relationships. Both my wife and I have been in relationships in the past where we were against marijuana use and they were pro marijuana use, where they would smoke pot.
I don't know about you guys, but the second I hear the word pot, I know immediately who I'm dealing with. Somebody who doesn't smoke it. I mean, it's not 1968. Nobody calls it that anymore. Anyway, fair warning, the lengths of clips moving forward are going to be about as long as I just showed. Some irrelevant bits have been left in for the sake of context. So, without further ado, let's rebut some crazy opinions.
We would get upset by it. And in many situations, we would break up with those individuals. And a lot of you may think, what's wrong with pot? Pot's not a big deal. That's what a lot of people say, and in many ways, that's true. Pot, from multiple perspectives, could be accurately perceived as pretty harmless. This depends on the scenarios, the legalities, etc. But to focus on that is missing the point.
All right, I'll bite. What is your point?
If someone says in a relationship that I don't want you to ride a certain brand of bikes anymore, or I don't want you to drink a certain kind of juice anymore, because from my perspective, it harms our relationship for some reason, or it does something else that's destructive.
Okay, fair enough. Anyone else starting to get a weird feeling? I'm starting to see some red flags popping up here.
Whether it be towards their feelings, their finances, whatever. If someone says this, you're probably not going to care, especially if your relationship is on the line. If I'm supposed to give up a certain brand of something because it's too expensive for us to afford, or because it hurts my significant other's feelings, or just makes them uncomfortable, I don't care. It's fine. There are other ways to enjoy bikes, other brands. There are other juices to enjoy. But with pot, it seems like people are unwilling to compromise.
What? Where's the compromise? You're talking about weed in general, so what you're really saying is give up all juice and quit cycling, or else. And that's pretty fucked up. Nobody does it quite like Miss Mary Jane. What other ways could you enjoy weed if you're asked not to use it?
And a lot of people are willing to lie about it for the sake of continuing to use pot. In a relationship I was in before, one of the first meaningful relationships in my life, I asked this girl not to smoke pot because it made her different than how I preferred. I liked her personality exactly the way it was. I didn't want her to be chill or whatever. I just wanted her to be in her natural state.
The way you preferred her, even if her natural state was stressed the fuck out and full of anxiety? Anyway, sliding past those weird statements, if you had a problem being around a high person, what's not to get? It's a different wavelength, one not always appreciated by the sober. But can you just ask her not to do it when you're around? Why did this need to be a big enough deal for her to give it up completely?
I would have felt the same way about head meds, bipolar medication, or whatever you want to call it, especially when she didn't have any disorder, but was diagnosed with one. At least from my perspective, she didn't have a disorder. Of course, that was probably an uneducated perspective.
You think?
But I still felt a life without drugs, a life where you're trying to deal with your issues head on, without any chemical influence, if it's possible, you should do it. Because otherwise, you're just doing drugs the rest of your life.
What? So you would ask this woman to give up prescribed medication just because you didn't think that she needed it? Because a life without drugs is what? Honorable? Lots of people rely on medicine for a whole host of reasons. Should we throw out all the EpiPens and encourage the allergic to stay indoors at all times? You are not a doctor, sir. You don't get to make calls on whether or not someone is bipolar or what drugs they need.
Anyway. So we'd break up with these individuals. Not so much because they did pot, but because they would lie to us about it, and because they would show that they clearly prioritize pot more than us.
Or they continue doing something in secret that you disapproved of. I'm just speculating here, but how does this come about anyway? Did you know they smoked weed when you started dating? I mean, it's obviously a pretty big deal breaker for you, so I'm just wondering how you got these stoners to agree to this relationship in the first place. Did you downplay your dislike of weed in the beginning, and then ask them to stop using it once they were invested? Because that would be pretty unfair.
Now, if someone tells me not to ride that certain brand of bike, or they tell me not to drink that certain juice, and they say that they'll break up with me if I do, I don't have to understand why, and they could explain themselves, which would be great. But if they just say it really hurts my feelings or makes me uncomfortable or whatever, fine. I love you. I'm going to stop riding that goddamn bike brand. I'm going to stop drinking that certain kind of juice.
Ugh, again with the bikes and juices. This is a really shitty analogy. Weed is not a brand or a type. Asking someone to quit is much closer to asking someone to give up a hobby. A really, really fun hobby. Whether they're using weed for relaxation, stress relief, pain reduction, or just good old-fashioned chill times with friends, they simply enjoy it, so what? If these people are anything like me, I would absolutely require a damn good, logical explanation for letting go of anything that I enjoy. I love you is not a reason or an explanation. It's actually a pretty manipulative card to play to inspire motivation. One might accurately perceive that as controlling.
Because it's not so important to me that I'm going to destroy a relationship. And yes, you are also risking destroying a relationship by saying you're going to break up with me if I use these things. But at the same time, you may have very good reasons. And it's not even that important to me. So I'm not going to throw down over it. I'm not going to make a big issue over it. It's not like you're asking me to stop driving cars to get to work, that I have to walk from now on. It's not like you're significantly impeding my normal daily functions.
God, this is like a high schooler's rules for love. But what if smoking weed is important to you? Clearly it was important enough to destroy relationships in the past. What are you saying here? That weed, or the things you like, should be given up freely because they don't impact your mobility or any other life need? The wants or likes that we pursue in life are not insignificant. They shape and motivate us. They influence us to do good and to do bad. But most importantly, they drive us to learn more about ourselves. You don't get to tell another adult what is valid to enjoy just because you happen to be together. Resorting to using super classy ultimatums to get your way is a bad move. No simple disagreement on certain likes and dislikes should be able to break any strong relationship.
But people would repeatedly prioritize both my wife and I after they prioritized pot. They would go get high, and then they would act like it never happened. In maybe some cases, people tell the truth eventually. But the point is that they initially prioritized a substance over human beings.
How? How do they prioritize weed over human beings? Look, people are going to do what they want to do. It's that old, what they don't know won't hurt them. I'm not saying it's right. It's really shitty to be lied to, but lies do come from somewhere. They're motivated by something or someone. If you create an environment where people aren't free to do what they want, if they're threatened with losing someone they love if they do what they want, an environment where compromise isn't going to be reached no matter what, well, don't be surprised if you get lied to.
And this isn't a relationship that I would consider to be productive. that I would consider to be beneficial for either person. Not in the realm of honesty or in the realm of people being their true selves.
No shit.
Relationships shouldn't necessarily be about one person telling another person what they can and can't do.
Yeah, they shouldn't be about that at all, right?
It should be about that person automatically doing what comes naturally to them and the other person being okay with it because they're truly compatible. Now, this is an idealistic perspective to have regarding relationships. But some people would consider that a healthy perspective to have, considering it implies that you're more compatible with each other without having to change each other.
Yep, that's totally what the rest of us are doing. We're all looking for that perfect soulmate.
Now, I have my problems. My wife has her problems. But those are issues that we can work on. A drug addiction, and when I say addiction, I mean something that you are willing to destroy your relationship over. That is something that should not happen.
Yes, it is sad when actual addiction breaks down relationships, but who's destroying the relationship here? The person laying down ultimatums, or the person trying to be themselves in this mess? Backing your partner into a corner so that they fit the mold of whatever you prefer is a dead fucking end. You may have good intentions, you may think you know what's right for them, but it's disrespectful as fuck. Healthy relationships are built on equal footing. That person you're with has the right to make their own decisions. And if they're going overboard, if they're taking things too far, hell yeah, call them on their bullshit, just as they should call you on yours. We all need someone to help keep us in check. But it takes two people to compromise, and nobody wants to be bent to someone else's will. There's always going to be conflict. There's always going to be petty little disagreements. If you can't work it out, break up. It's not a great tragedy. You arrived at an impasse. Fuck it. It's no one's fault. Just move on. Go out and find someone who you can work with.
You should be in a relationship with somebody who does drugs like you do. You should be in a relationship with someone who's okay with that behavior. Criminals, if it's a crime to do whatever drug you're doing, should be with other criminals. And people who do not commit crimes should be with people who do not commit crimes. Why? Because we deserve who we are. We deserve to be with people like ourselves.
No, we don't. We don't deserve anything in love. Most people feel pretty damn lucky when they find someone that compliments them. It's no easy feat, and not everyone gets the chance to experience it. You're never going to find anyone who's just like you. There's always going to be some shit to work out. Plenty of people have partners who don't drink or smoke, but don't mind if they do. Everyone has deal breakers, and that's fine. You are under no obligation to date a pothead. But that doesn't mean that the rest of us don't know how to work out differences, or that we shouldn't date someone who's different from ourselves.
And yes, sometimes you can be attracted to someone so much, or you could bond with someone so much that you want to make it work out regardless. But you're setting yourself up for failure, considering the fact that you have this conflict that seems to be irreparable. They are completely intolerant of something that you prioritize, a drug, over people.
Again, how? How do they prioritize weed over people? Because they broke an unreasonable promise? You know, it is possible to hold two feelings in your heart at one time. The want to stay true to yourself, and to stay true to a promise that maybe you didn't really want to agree to, but maybe you were forced into it because you didn't want to lose someone you love. Oops. Speculating again, excuse me.
So they're essentially intolerant of who you are. So what I'm saying in this video is not that pot is absolutely horrible and everyone who does pot are terrible people. A lot of my family members who I love smoke pot, and it's legal in my state, so they're not criminals.
Criminal's a bit harsh, eh? Yeah, weed is technically illegal in parts of your country, and outside of medical use, it's completely illegal in mine. Fuck, it's not even legal in Jamaica. But a law is really only as strong as everyone else's will to follow it, and law enforcement's will to prosecute it. Cannabis has what I consider to be an unfortunate legal status, one that many people fall victim to because they choose to ignore that legal status, like fibbing on income tax, casual wagers on home poker games, or pissing in an alley, people choose to ignore the possible negative consequences of those actions. That doesn't make those actions legal, but it begs the question, how illegal are they? If weed was really all-out condemned, then we wouldn't be allowed to have things like this. Or we wouldn't be able to have public celebrations like this.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So its criminality is pretty much a fucking gray area, isn't it?
What I'm saying in this video is that if you're with somebody who smokes pot, despite you asking them not to smoke pot, you probably deserve to be with somebody who's willing to love you more than a drug.
And what I'm saying in this video is, if you happen to be someone who enjoys smoking weed, and you're with someone who's trying to manipulate you out of smoking weed, you certainly deserve to be with someone who will accept you for who you are, flaws and all.
And to that pot smoker,
yo,
you should probably be with somebody who loves to smoke drugs like you do. Because that way you can go on smoking pot the rest of your life, blowing money on drugs, without anyone telling you not to do what you're obviously addicted to doing.
Is that really the picture of the average user that you have in your head? Like everyone who smokes weed lives in a den and pisses their lives away? Excuse me while I go on a tangent, but this is what I hate about the public perception of weed in some circles. Because people who don't use it have that image of it. They act like it's impossible to enjoy it and still be a contributing member to society. Or they assume that anyone who smokes weed dedicates their lives to it and looks like this. When in reality, regular, degular people smoke weed too.
And I say you're addicted because with all of my experience, I've seen person after person after person swear up and down that they don't want to do pot or that they won't do pot, and yet those people just keep going back again and again smoking pot. They say I can quit anytime, and then they wind up smoking it again. Actions speak louder than words. It is my firm position that pot is addictive. Just like porn is addictive.
Oh, you have a problem with porn too? Addiction is a real medical condition. It's not really up for layman interpretation, and it sure as fuck doesn't apply to this situation. Just because someone is willing to say one thing and do the other does not also mean that they have an addiction.
Something that you say you can quit or will quit, but wind up doing again and again, is probably something you're addicted to. And a lot of people watching this video are nodding their heads, agreeing with me, because they have met individuals just like the people I'm describing, who say they're going to quit, they say it's not addictive, and then they go on using it anyway.
Have you ever considered that they go on using it because they want to? Again, adults get to make their own choices. When they say it's not addictive, they generally mean that marijuana does not cause the same dependency as something like nicotine. I'm not saying it's impossible to become addicted to weed. It's rare, but it can happen. And I'm by no means denying that there are people who get lost in it, rely on it, and start to abuse it. Like anything, it has its negatives. Paranoia, lung problems, and short-term memory loss, to name a few. Weed is not perfect. It's not for everybody. However, the vast majority of users don't become dependent on it. One of the many reasons people are so drawn to it is they can pick it up and put it back down. Like porn, video games, or anything else we do solely for pleasure, it should be kept in check and used in moderation.
They say they're not going to do it behind your back, and they lie to your face in the process, and they wind up smoking pot. So it's, again, not my position that pot smokers are all terrible people. They're not. Many pot smokers are awesome people. But it is my position that people who do not smoke pot who have a problem with people who smoke pot should not be in relationships with people who smoke pot.
Aw, gold star, sweetie! What an astute observation! Yes, people who have fundamental differences are probably not going to work out. That's like relationships 101.
Otherwise, you're asking for ongoing, repeated problems. Anyway, that's why I have a problem with pot. It's because people prioritize pot, specifically pot smokers, over other human beings. And no drug should be more important than your significant other. And yet, based on my previous experiences and my wife's previous experiences, so many pot smokers, in fact, 100% of the pot smokers that we've dated, have prioritized those drugs over their loved ones. And that is super screwed up.
If you hate weed, which, let's be honest, is pretty fucking clear at this point, why do you keep dating stoners and asking them to change? If 100% of the people you've dated have continued to smoke, doesn't that say a lot more about you than it does about them? Not dating someone is always an option. Just saying.